to another episode of Critical Critique. I guess this is a pause on point, maybe?
It is.
Or
It's kind of a hybrid episode.
it's yeah. We're doing a bit of a hybrid today because we're covering the man, the myth, the legend, the Digibro, the omnipotent autist Digibro, who has graced our sub boxes with his immensely gigantuan insight by deciding to create an entirely new system of personality testing to figure out how anime characters think.
Well, I disagree with you already, Naretsu, because there is no testing.
That's true. It's such an advanced and complex but also simple system. You don't even need a test for it. You don't even need to do a questionnaire. You don't.
It's a shitpost.
It's a shitpost. So he put out this video, right? And we're not gonna cover the whole hour because that would be fucking retarded. Right? We're not gonna cover the whole hour where he goes through all the different anime characters. The 5-minute opening explanation is what we're mostly going to cover, and we might jump over to one of his other little videos explaining of him trying to kind of explain what this is, because he has had to try and clarify a little bit what he means.
Which I didn't think was... Yeah, go ahead first.
Oh, I was about to say every new method of measurement needs its it needs to be refined as problems come up. In his defense.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, I didn't really think it needed clarification, but we might bring up some things he did say in those videos, just because it would be relevant then.
Yeah, this is gonna be more Ellie taking the lead on this one, because Ellie's got the most problems, I think. I'm probably just gonna be making autist jokes the whole time.
Yeah, probably. It's been a hard shut-in period for all of us.
Yeah, we're all going crazy. But anyway, I guess without any further delay, let's dive into the level 5 autism. That is Digibro. So we will begin now.
I've got a bone to pick with the MBTI personality matrix. I think they were onto something with the 16 categories of people, but the way those people are characterized is completely backwards.
Alright, quick pause.
Okay. That is a very, how should I put it?
Grounded.
Direct. Yeah. He has a problem with the older personality type test stuff.
Most people
he
who
agrees
aren't
with
into
the... Nah, you first. I'm going to talk more anyway.
Yeah, here we go. Anyways, most people who aren't into like marketing and trying to do this to, like, I don't know, schmooze up to like potential buyers or whatever. They tend to not use this chart anymore. I know that no respectable like psychiatrist or psychologist uses the Myers-Briggs personality test anymore.
I've always seen it as just kind of like a fun like thing.
You run into a thing where most people are an INTJ, despite it, supposedly being the rarest personality type. Because people tend to like project what they view themselves as whenever they do tests like this.
Yeah, of course. If you do a test, you're always thinking and smart and all that stuff.
Yeah,
most,
I think I've done one of these before, but I have no fucking idea where I landed at that point. I have no idea.
Done it in high school.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, most people in that class fell into the INTJ chart. Man, really exceptional class of C students.
What would you call that? You'd probably call that like some form of bias, right? Like self-bias, maybe. Might be the correct term for it.
Well, people want to ascribe positive personality traits, especially when they're going to be presenting a personality type to
Yeah.
somebody else. They're like, oh, I need to represent myself as the best as possible.
Yeah. So here's the thing, right? Him having problems with this is not necessarily a bad thing, right? Cause,
Oh yeah, no, I
clearly,
absolutely agree with him on that.
Yeah.
That it is backwards.
Yeah.
A lot of people these days seem to be trending towards the new hip thing for a lot of people is the light dark triad kind of form of measurement.
I love the way that fucking sounds. The light dark triad.
Yeah,
It sounds
it's
like
kind
it
of
sounds like a
edgy.
fucking sounds like a fucking cult in a Final Fantasy game. Like the
It
villains.
really
that
does.
you're gonna
Well,
be...
because Triple Triad was a game in Final Fantasy VIII.
Yeah. It's the light. We have to defeat the light dark triad. They're trying to bring balance by killing all the people in the city. We have to, like
You have to save time and space by playing a card game.
Yeah, it's fucking great. So, I guess now that so he's established that he has a problem with the personality chart. Let's see.
Well,
his
in what
solution
he likes something about it. He likes that it has 16 boxes.
Yeah, it's a nice 16 is a nice number. you
Just
know?
like a
It's-
political compass.
Yeah. All right, let's see what his solution is.
Personality, after all, is extremely contextual and fluid.
Mm-hmm.
People act differently in response to different situations and different types of people. I ask you, what exactly is an introverted person?
Whoa.
Is
well,
it someone who
did she?
doesn't...
I see here some text.
Oh yeah. So we've got extroverts who are energized by people.
Well,
They
no
enjoy a
wait.
variety of
Did
tasks.
Digi said, "What is an introvert?" He doesn't know.
Well, yeah. So let's read it then, shall we? What does it
Yeah.
say? It says introverts often like working alone or in small groups. Prefer a more deliberate place. They like to focus on one task at a time. So that is what it says.
All right.
in
So that
introvert
is an
is.
introvert.
Right. Yeah, I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
I get the feeling though, to his credit, right? I get the feeling that he's talking more in the abstract. Because look, Ellie, you have to understand, right? When you're dealing with someone like Digibro, you have to kind of navigate the autistic logic, right? You have to
Autistic
kind of
logic.
think about, right? And hear me out here, right? You have to kind of think about this from what is he trying to say, not what he said. Because what he said was something along the lines of what even is an introvert, right? I don't think that comes from a place of him not understanding what it actually, like, textbook definitionally means. I feel like it's coming more from the place of, well, not all introverts are the same. There are different categories. Like, he's probably come up with, like, 50 different categories of what introvert actually means in his head, right? So to be fair, I get the feeling he's going to come at it from more of that perspective, rather than I'm changing the dictionary definition of what an introvert is.
Well,
That's just my take. I'm very open to being proven wrong. 'Cause
Well,
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I have a slightly different take, and I'm being somewhat facetious right now. But the point is, of course, a small spoiler, he's going to say the definition of introverted is vague, undefined.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's why it's bad. And that's why I've made this new chart.
Yeah, it's vague and undefined. He even said it himself. Yeah, personalities and stuff like that are fluid. In fact, to the credit for the Myers-Briggs chart, which is kind of a fucking meme, so I'm kind of defending a bad meme here. To its credit, it is purposely they're designed to not be specific, but to think in abstracts. Because at the period it was, designed, around like, what was the Myers-Briggs dates back to, like what? 1920s, 1930s. I can't remember exactly.
Pretty
But,
old, I think.
It's an old test, yeah.
Yeah, it's a very old chart that was earlier days of psychoanalysis and stuff like that. So it is thinking in abstracts because the fundamental understanding of the human brain and personality and stuff like that was still being formulated at the time. So to its credit, yeah, it's intentionally thinking in abstracts. I don't think you can really get to like even the dark triad test that chart I was talking about also speaks within abstracts because it recognizes that people aren't entirely like all empathetic or all sociopath. Like it's different types of range
you have
of,
different you have different types, and then you can also have different variations and combinations and like levels and that kind of like it very much can also be contextual based on the situation. People can change,
and that's why there are multiple questions in these tests which test for the same aspect but in different scenarios.
But yeah, let's keep going. See what Digi's see where it goes.
Also, I just want to bring it back to one thing real quick. So, Naretsu, you say autistic logic here, but thinking in abstracts like Digibro is more like it's like the opposite of autistic logic, because isn't the whole thing with as a sign of autistic spectrum disorder is that you're thinking in specifics?
Maybe I'm using the wrong terminology, but I feel like it's something along the lines of he's taking the abstract and trying to categorize it into something that he feels is better, right?
Yeah.
So he's taking like the abstract idea of what is an introvert, right? He's identified that it's a abstract concept that's not very it's very vague, right? And then he's coming up with he's probably like processing different variations of like what introvert means to him, and then merging those together into what he would consider to be his like design of what it is, and then expressing that via like saying that it's fluid, right? Because he's he's technically right, as we just established.
Well,
right? So like, that's kind of more like, again, I'm a bit of an autist myself, so it's kind of hard for me to try and fucking explain it, right? But I get the feeling from my own like thinking about it that that's what he's trying to kind of get at least in.
I was just making a joke about autistic children, but okay.
Yeah, exactly. I knew this cast was going to be fucking great.
Yeah, but a conclusion which I draw from this then is that Digi is basically coming to the same conclusion as the makers of these tests. Personality is fluid, that's why the tests are designed to ask the same question in different scenarios to get a general idea what you are in general, approximately.
Yeah. It's just his way is better, Ellie. You don't understand.
And
Ellie,
did
deep
you
lore
hear?
Here, Ellie has a long experience with dealing with people on the spectrum, as it were.
Already over a year long.
We really do need to get Rika Fag on here one day.
One day. But anyway.
So to continue, so Digi is complaining about something that is already being solved, basically.
Pretty, in a sense. I don't know if I'd say, like, as me and Lolly have kind of said, I don't know if it's been quote unquote solved.
Well,
it's definitely
addressed.
It's definitely it's gotten better since this graph's inception, or this specific test's inception.
Well,
right?
even
Like,
I want to defend this test a little more than Lolly, maybe, because maybe I'm less familiar with the evolution of these tests.
Maybe you're falling for the meme.
Maybe I am, but the thing is that I've done this test once or twice, and it asks, I'm going to repeat myself, it asks tests you on the same things in different scenarios. So his question, what is introverted? Is it because if you're this? But what if if you're in situation this? How could you possibly know you're introverted when confronted with these different scenarios? Well, this test already tests for that, so it's already addressed. So I don't know what his problem is with it.
Well, maybe we'll find out. Let's keep going.
Find people that they like to be around because there are so few that they can connect with. Maybe I don't like being around my friends, or maybe I don't have the right friends. Either way, introversion is a behavioral symptom, not a cause. Far more important to understanding why people act the way they do is to understand.
So this is what I meant. Maybe you don't have the right friends, or maybe you just have no real desire to have lots of friends. Those two things are being tested for. So Digi's problem with the test is non-existent.
Yeah.
Alright. I don't really have anything to add to that, so yeah.
And why they think the way they think. And that's where my neurotyping chart comes
Hey.
in. Not unlike MBTI.
Here we go.
Neurotyping,
So this is version 1. This is version 1.0 of the neurotyping chart.
I like how the top right is just new types, and I can completely understand where he's coming from with that.
So he's about to explain it, but just on the face of it, what do we think? Because I like his gradient. I think he put a lot of effort into that gradient in Photoshop. You can tell.
Oh yeah, no, there's definitely some. Well, no, gradients aren't terribly hard to put together in GIMP, but there's definitely. He definitely put effort into this.
Yeah.
It looks like those. It kind of looks like how it's called Nyanta and Spike's
So
squares are off.
I'll give him credit that he used different text, like the gradient doesn't consume the text because he's done lighter and he's used correct fucking color theory, so you can actually read the lighter text on the lighter part of the gradient. If you look at the impressionistic thinking one, right? So I'll give him that. He's clearly designed this properly. It's just it does look like something that was made by someone in fucking MS Paint in 20. It's got that kind of cheapness to it, I guess. That kind of cheap
part of the
look
aesthetic.
to it, which is. I think it is part of the aesthetic.
He's really an aesthetician.
Yeah. So he's got literal thinking, linear thinking, lexical thinking, and impressionistic thinking, right? As his axis, right? And then in between he's got a whole bunch of different things. Right? You've got human calculators, you've got analysts, you've got factioners or whatever.
Impressionists.
New types, tacticians, quick-witted, shadow guardians, aesthetics, brooders, caretakers, room brighteners, impressionists, middle managers, reasonable people. I love that one. That one's fucking great. Reasonable people. Clear-sighted and pure instinct.
So I just want to say this is both more specific and more vague at the same time in its description.
Yeah! It's fucking weird, eh?
Kind of love it.
I know. See, this is why I kind of like Digibro, right? I like him because he's really fucking endearing, right? He's just he's like a puppy that you hold in your arms and you pet it, and the puppy's resting in your hands. It's just aww.
It's adorable. It's like Schrodinger's fart huffing, I think. He's both simultaneously not stuck up his ass, but also stuck up his ass at the same time.
Well, I'm more of the opinion of stuck up in his ass in this regard because,
Yeah, this is one of the quantum states that's being represented right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's
yeah.
disregard the entire field of philosophy, no, not philosophy, of psychoanalyzing and personality studies. Disregard all of
Yeah.
that. I have a better idea because that MIBT
feel-
thing, it's bad.
Yeah.
It's
I feel like Digi it would have helped Digi to have possibly done a bit more research into the current testing methodologies, right? I feel like if he'd done a bit of research, it would have strengthened his it would have strengthened his argument here. But
maybe
What I would
looked up the definition of introverted.
What I would rather see is I would like to see these characters organized by their theoretical political beliefs. That's far more interesting and relevant to the kids these days.
we got to get the anime political compass.
Like, did you
I would
know
like-
that did you know that what's her name? The one from Steins Gate, Krisu. Did you know that she
Krisu.
is secretly communist as fuck? I made that up, but you believed it right now.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. But
No,
anyway,
what I just to go further, Digi has placed all these characters himself, and
Yes.
that makes his chart kind of fall apart in my eyes also, because Akane is a middle manager, Light is a brooder, and Oro is quick witted, and Hitagi is a fascinator. All fine, but by what metric? Because I
Well-
feel so.
Let's get into it then, shall we? He's about
Surely
to explain
he'll
it.
explain.
So, yeah, so let's continue.
I've broken down human neurotypes into 16 categories, which I'll be classifying about 100 anime characters into in the course of this video. Mine is much easier to classify yourself with. You don't need any kind of quiz
Oh,
or
really?
anything. Just
Whoa.
think about the way you think and find your place along these two axes. Linearity
All right. Okay.
Self-reporting for the win.
Yeah. You don't even need a test, man. Dude, it's clearly superior. You don't even need a test, man.
Damn, I've been
Don't
beaten.
Yeah, you don't even need to answer any questions. You just need to look at the chart and pick your waifu.
Decide all that shit.
Yeah, man.
I will give him some credit here. If you're trying to analyze a character just by a glance, a very simple if imprecise logic is probably more useful than having a quick questionnaire to fill out. If you're just trying to eyeball
Yeah.
that shit.
Yeah. Also,
This is at
Well-
least kind of useful. On
Well-
its
just a
face.
side.
The-
Just a side note as well. We are not watching him go through 100 fucking anime characters.
No.
We're not going to spend all day watching him and debating about all of them. We're mostly here for the important bit, which is him talking about his actual new thing that he's come up with. So, but yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay, maybe let's play for a little bit further and let's see, because I forgot where this
I think
line
he's about.
ends.
I think he's about to get into his methodology as to how he's come up with this. So let's continue.
and lexicality. Linearity refers to how linear the thoughts in your head are. An extremely linear thinker only has a single train of thought at a given time and communicates in very straightforward ways, while a nonlinear or lateral thinker will have multiple trains of thought at any given time and tend to communicate in more jumbled or indirect ways. Lexicality refers
Which person only has ever one thought in his head?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about that one, Chief.
I'm going to put this out here. So with linear and lateral thinking, right? Mind you, the human brain is known more for lateral thinking. That's the one thing it does really well that you can't really replicate with computers at the moment is that the human brain is really good with lateral thinking as opposed to linear thinking.
You can have multiple thoughts backburning at the same time,
and you can reference
even if you,
and you can reference things that aren't directly in front of you or you haven't thought about even in years by just like pulling it out from like
just
a completely different.
flicking a switch.
Yeah, we don't organize things in like a singular like file system
even if
type
you're
of thing, right?
even if you're more linearly focused on a specific thing at that given moment, you still have the ability to immediately fucking drag some shit out of the fucking files, right?
Now, you can actually kind of switch yourself. You know how people will describe that they're focusing on something so hard like that they don't notice something they would have otherwise noticed? That's because the human brain can switch over into linear thinking, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, there's a dog barking in the background.
The dog has an opinion.
I'll have to get like an audio sample so I can just cut it out in the background in the future, but whatever. So you can switch over to a more linear form of thinking, right? And the way you can do this is actually you can actually have what are called like somatic triggers to this. I forget what psychologist it was who talked about. I think it was Kelly, but like it was described in he described it as kind of like a second self or whatever, and you could just kind of like trigger that by he would have this like little ritual where he would pop a Tic Tac or something, and then he would switch over into that more focused or more desired role. The Japanese have this too. That's why gis are a thing, right? They tie the bandana. That is a more spiritual form of the same concept that you can kind of switch into a different mode of thought at any given time. Noretsu, you draw all the time. It's often talked about that you tend to think about shapes and stuff in more abstract ways when you switch over into what's like a drawing brain, right?
Yeah. When you are thinking about, like, if I'm looking at an image, right? Let's say I look at like a human body, and you can look at that in the form of what you're seeing, but then when you switch into the more artistic sort of mind, you break that down into its base components, right? So you start to see the more like, okay, that's a cylinder, that's a triangle, that's a square, that's a the process is essentially deconstructed. To use the meme, it is deconstructing and reconstruction, right? You essentially take something, you deconstruct it to its base components, and then you reconstruct it in either another pose or another shape, or you deform certain things, or you do that. And it does take a while to kind of train yourself to do that, in a sense. Like, some people it just kind of happens naturally, but you kind of have to, like, the more you kind of draw and the more you realize that pretty much everything you see around you is essentially just made up of basic shapes, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you start to see things like that, and it allows you to kind of analyze, like, but not only artwork, but you can analyze other things in that way, and it helps in many different fields. So yeah, I think that there is definitely credence to this idea that you can kind of switch between these two different like mindsets using, you could use a trigger, or perhaps sometimes it just fucking happens in some cases.
Presents a natural problem with this for most characters, right? Most one-dimensional or second-dimensional characters. This chart's useful, I would say, to an extent. For one or two-dimensional characters, it breaks the fuck down with third-dimensional characters. Or three-dimensional characters.
It breaks the fuck down when you apply it to humans, right?
Like the more realistic and to an actual person the writing is for a character, the less applicable this chart is.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like it's maybe a cheap shot, but just like you said, human calculators is basically the wrong word for it also. And I would maybe even L here. Maybe all these human calculators should be way at the bottom of linear thinking, because they just are probability machines. They just one by one go through scenarios, not really, experiencing the multiple thoughts, just all chance and probabilities. That's not human thinking, that's computer thinking, and that is very linear.
Right.
So it's weird that human calculator would be used to describe both lateral and lexical rather than lateral and linear. Because calculation is a very linear form of thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
all right.
I have a sneaking suspicion that Digi here is kind of conflating lateral thinking with smart.
Maybe.
Yeah,
Let's see where he goes, because he's about to get a bit more into it.
To how much a person's understanding depends on the ability to codify ideas using specific language. A lexical thinker will only understand things which can be put into words, refusing to acknowledge understandings which haven't been codified. Non-lexical or impressionistic thinkers, on the other hand, might understand things but struggle to put them into words, and find other methods of communication preferable. Linearity and lexicality can be used to describe types of thinking, but not necessarily how good someone is at thinking.
All
so
right.
I'll also be noting...
Quick pause. What do you think about this when linear and lateral is easy to get, but lexical and impressionistic thinking, it feels a little bit iffy, because lexical thinkers, is Kurisu only interested in the things that have been codified? Does Kamina not accurately word his intentions?
Yeah. There's a lot of times where Kamina was directly the famous line, grit those teeth or whatever, he was directly telling to the person in his face he was about to punch him.
Yeah. And, Kamina is here in the image. I don't recall, it's been a while of course, but I don't recall Kamina being symbolic sometimes. I mean, the story is more symbolic than Kamina, but Kamina is not being... He doesn't take up music to express himself.
Yeah, he's not using, abstract. He's very direct, I think, in a sense, wouldn't he be? Because he's very, this is my goal, reach for the heavens, blah, 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 blah. I don't know. This is the part where I'm kind of like, nah. I do agree, though, that I think that his idea of lexical versus impressionistic is very iffy. I think that he's, I feel like there's certainly more of, a gradient, it's not very, binary, right? I feel like
it has...
I think most people are able to understand abstract forms of communication unless they are extremely autistic, right? Right? Not jokey autistic, but severely autistic and unable to actually understand subtract, or even direct, right? Because that's also sometimes the case with severe, right? I feel like, again, it's not really a binary as much as it's I don't want to say a spectrum either. I feel like both just exist, right? I don't think there's probably anyone out there that just cannot understand. If you showed someone a drawing, for example, right, which in my opinion could easily be an impressionistic form of communication, because you can do a lot of symbolism and that kind of shit. There's some people that will not pick up on certain things that other people will, but at the same time, those people that are not picking up on those things could be picking up on other things, or translating those specific symbols into something different than someone else. That's the whole argument of subjectivity, right? Is that people look at things and come out with different, outputs, right?
That's the
Input
argument
is
of
the same,
art.
output is different. It's becoming an argument of art, but I'm using that to kind of explain kind of what my thought process is listening to this, right? Is that he's talking about this, I feel, a little bit too binary in the sense that I think that it's a bit more complicated than that.
Well, it is binary because it's supposed to be like,
the two
it's supposed
extremes.
To be it's supposed to be a linear scale chart, but I think I'm a bit more warm to the idea of scaling things from lexical to impressionistic than lateral to linear, because you do have people that will explain things in very specific ways, or have people that explain things in very vague ways that only people who jive with them as they work can really understand it. I actually have
that is true.
I actually have a few friends who are out there enough that if you never met them and just talked to them for 5 seconds, you may not know what the fuck they're talking about. But like, having known some of them for 5 years, they can mention something very vague and I can immediately know what the hell they're talking about.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I agree that lexical and impressionistic thinking does apply more to real people than lateral and linear. But his examples of what is impressionistic and lexical in this chart
I think that's
isn't
I think that's where
really
I'm getting
working
hung up as
either.
well. Yeah, I think that's that's what's tripping me up as well, is that it feels like he's trying to argue in the extremes too much, I guess, when that's not really how that works.
I mean, if I were to basically make this chart, and let's keep the scales, basically the bottom left corner, the bottom left quarter would not exist.
You'd have it as like a triangle chart.
Well, no, wait, I forget. The bottom half wouldn't exist, and then the upper right corner would exist basically.
So
repeat that, like
only the bottom. Did I say bottom? Sorry, I meant that the top right corner would exist.
So only the top right corner would exist. You would X all the other quadrants. You would just keep those 4 at the top.
Basically, because this is more applying to real people now. Because everybody can think impressionistically. Everybody thinks laterally. So
that's
it's
what I'm getting
just
at,
a smaller gradient in the top right corner that you can have. I mean,
gotcha.
for anime characters, of course, use the whole thing. But once you apply it to real people, I think that it's really concentrated over there. And of course, when you have something like autism and other mental issues and
that's just
defects,
fucking new type shit, mate.
then it's more, of course, then you can have other things. But for the common people, I think they're in the top right corner, basically exclusively.
All right. Well, let's keep going.
The estimated IQs of the characters I talk about, so that we can see how these types of thinking manifest at different IQ levels.
Yeah, this is.
Oh yeah.
This is also very iffy when he uses IQ.
Yeah, let's let him go. I want to go a little bit more, then we can talk about that.
I also want to emphasize that this is a chart for describing ways of thinking, not personalities, which are affected by other factors such as temperament or environment. There will be cases in which people who think very similarly can nonetheless manifest very different personalities. On my Neuro cards, which I'll be showing on screen throughout the video, I've estimated each character's IQ and rated their temperament as either relaxed, neutral, or intense.
Alright, can you pause?
That's what I was waiting for.
Yeah.
So
So
IQ.
IQ. A thing.
And this is the point at which
So-
we get yeeted
so-
from YouTube.
So let's talk about the bell curve, guys. Let's.
How temperamental are you feeling today?
Oh no.
Well, you know what they say
I
about
don't
people
know.
who are...
I don't know.
Well, I was about to say, you know what they say about people with an intense temperament with roughly an 80 IQ.
They are
I don't know why.
It's a race
I don't
joke,
know
okay?
Why... Okay, look. I don't know why he's dragging IQ into this. Because how the fuck do you measure the IQ of an anime character? Because obviously, it's
Also, notice he says
estimatory.
canonical IQs will not be addressed in this video. Right up there. I had to judge them for myself for the sake of consistency. So, like, what metric is he using
Yeah.
to,
Yeah, like
Like, is there something
This
in the video
way-
description that describes, like, the estimation he used?
the methodology. Yeah, like because this is the thing, right? It's just way too fucking muddy. Like
I
there's
mean, if he's
way
a
too
game-
much mud in this pool.
I mean, if he's a gamer, he's just judging IQ based off of their skin color anyways.
I mean, you know,
Well, he's not a gamer, so that's one thing.
I just don't. I just like. It just feels irrelevant to me, the IQ bit. Like I can get the temperament and the lateral and impressionistic, right? I can get that, but why IQ? Why is he measuring IQ?
Also, IQ.
It's what it is. It's the IQ is arbitrary. Arbitrary. Well, however you exactly pronounce it.
arbitrary, yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
it's not necessarily arbitrary. The thing with IQ is that it deals more with pattern recognition more than anything, right? Rather than things like, oh, you know, how much you know or whatever. It's how quickly you learn, and how quickly you learn is based off of pattern recognition. This is why, you know, people who are paranoid schizophrenics actually tend to have a bit of a higher IQ than most other people, because they do, on average, connect more dots, as it were, but the way they connect dots leads to a pathological state, right? Because, you know, you can.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter how
it's
smart you are if you're in the if you're in the shed thinking that lawnmowers are like spewing toxic nerve gas or something. 5 people are going to get that reference.
Oh,
You know,
So-
you're not living a healthy or you're not using your intelligence to a to a good extent, as it were.
a useful extent, yeah. So I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't know. Well, I don't know about this, right? I don't know where Digi's going with this. I think.
Well, he does explain it, and to cut DG off in past form, he is using IQ in this case to make clear that lateral thinkers are not smarter necessarily.
Right.
That's
But my
the only point. And
my issue is right. All of this doesn't matter because how the fuck do you measure the IQ of a fictional character?
Also,
Well,
lateral thinking would trend naturally towards a higher IQ because, again, pattern recognition. That is a lateral.
Yeah,
form of thought.
that's what I mean. Like, what is his like criteria for measuring the IQ of a fictional character that is in a static form, right? Because normal humans, like IQ, can actually also, from what I understand, change, right? Like,
Yeah.
you can have like variations in your IQ over time, and it can go up and down dependent on like different factors. It's not a hard science, I guess, right? So it's like you're taking a static individual that you only have a very limited amount of information about, because an anime character, you're only really like involved
Or
with
manga.
them or a manga. Yeah, it's the same difference, right? You get what I mean, right? Like, you only get that window of the source material into who they are as a person and their personality and all that. I don't think you can really calculate an anime character's IQ based off that.
by that
Right,
sense,
because-
all harem main protagonists have an IQ of 30 because they cannot
Yeah, because they can't
recognize
fucking...
any pattern at all.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm getting at. Is like, what's his criteria here, and how is he like he should have posted his methodology a bit better. I feel to kind of figure that out, or just not use IQ at all. Like I don't think that the IQ bit is very useful in this case. I think that it's just causing more confusion than it is actually helping his argument.
Well, like I said, the reason why he used IQ is to tell the audience, hey, you're not necessarily smarter if you're more lateral.
Yeah, but you could do that. You could do that without using IQ.
Yeah, that's the thing. He could have done that without IQ.
He could have just said that. You know, he could have just said that, and it would have been fine, right? But yeah, let's keep going.
Q, I judged characters on their problem-solving abilities and ability to react quickly in a variety of different situations.
Okay, so he's calculating it based off events that happen within the source material that are hard set, like,
and his opinion of how quickly they adapted.
Okay, but there's only so many scenarios that you see within a source material. It's anecdotal almost. Like it's not a hard set criteria. Like
Also,
a character in a harem anime, right, or from K-On! Or whatever, is not going to be in the same level of stressful situations as Guts, right?
and even then, the tone of the show could actively fuck with your impression of how smart a person is. Like somebody could be smart in a show where intelligence or isn't portrayed very well. Also, is he going specifically off of like what sort when he says source material? Is it like just specifically things by the original author, or is it like spin-off stuff or stuff like that? Because there could be a lot of characters. There could be a lot of characters whose personality changes, depending on the writer. Star Wars, for an example, is a good one. The whole argument between Luke at the end of the original trilogy and then him and the sequel trilogy, people get a completely different impression. So, like, you get a similar thing with anime a lot, too.
Yeah, it's... Again, I feel like his methodology is not properly explained, and it's very flawed. I think that using... Again, IQ was not the correct thing to use here. It was not something... I think bringing it up is just completely muddying his entire thing. Completely. I think that it's not helpful at all.
Also, he hasn't explained how he's determining IQ.
That's what I mean! But anyway, let's keep going.
An immediate outward response. We'll be exploring the neurotyping chart in columns, starting on the left with the most lexical thinkers.
Yeah,
and
we're not
moving
going
from
to
the
do
most
that.
linear to least linear category.
Yeah, no, we're not going through the whole thing.
Well, maybe just skip forward halfway through the video, and we'll see where we land up, and so we can see one quadrant.
Is he done with his whole spiel now? Because I don't want to like. Let's just keep going until he starts talking about one character, and then we'll jump to like the middle and see what the deal is.
Stories within that column before moving on to the next column, and so on. Category 1, middle.
All right. So, okay. So yeah, category 1, middle managers, right? All right.
Wow, Misty's a fucking brainlet.
How about I got a better idea. How about we'll just go through middle managers. We'll let him go through middle managers, and that should probably give us a pretty good idea at how the rest of the video is going to be, right?
Well, yeah.
Like that'll pretty much, like, letting him go through one category should give us a pretty clear idea of what he's on about. So let's let him explain middle managers.
Middle managers. Very linear, very lexical. Very linear, very lexical thinkers are the classic idea of the type A anal retentive personality. These people have little patience for nonsense because they need their time just to process the rules which are already in place. And they are obsessed with rules, whether those be the laws of the land or their own conception of the rules.
So, At least with two of these characters, Hiragi and Mio, right? So, what's the phrase that they use for the straight man type of character in Japan? Is it
Tsumoki?
Yeah.
Starts with a tsu anyway.
Yeah, so when you think about that, like just those types of character personalities and those types of framing, as it were, for certain types of humor, kind of calls the use of this chart into question, because we already have ways to describe these characters that are far more shorthand. Oh, Hiragi, that's the straight man.
Well, Chiri is straight man for a great deal of Setsubo Sensei. Stephanie is that for No Game No Life. Jet Black, of course, is also it. Setsushi Nomura, I have seen very little of the show or manga, and I get the feeling that he is also the straight man. Lawrence is the straight man to Horo. Winry is, of course, is the straight man for the things that go on in the world regarding.
Chidori is the straight man for Sagura. Like, that's the whole humor. He does something outrageous because he doesn't understand how to adjust to, like, a normal teenage life, so he, like, I don't know, tosses a grenade into the classroom and she flips her shit.
Yeah, and Naruka is the normal high school girl from K-On! Also, so...
Yeah, and she contrasts with Ritsu. That's their whole bit. It's even directly referenced that that's their whole bit at some point.
So,
and this kind of leaves... I don't know anything about Baby Steps. And I've never watched Utena, which is, of course, a shame.
Yeah, he's gonna get into that.
Oh,
I think.
You haven't watched Utena?
stopped.
You should.
Well, with this video, I haven't. I think I got to about the end of this category and then I stopped. I feel like so. I don't remember. I think it was like 3 in the morning when I was watching this. So let's just see. Like let's let him bring up a character and see how he explains himself.
A word which doesn't fit its definition to the letter is an inappropriate word, and anyone using or spelling words wrongly comes off as dumb. Thanks to their very strict view of what is correct and incorrect, these characters tend to find themselves in arguments with less precise communicators often. Middle managers with more relaxed attitudes will likely just blow off and ignore much of what they see as the nonsense coming out of the mouths of their less lexical friends.
So,
lexical thinkers have a tendency...
Hiragi, Mio, and Kanami in particular do not ignore the nonsense that is going on around them.
Yeah,
their entire joke structure involves their reaction to it.
Yeah, I think that's a problem with this. Is he's speaking way too heavily in generalities. Like he's speaking way too like. This is how middle managers act. All of them.
All the characters.
All of the characters in here hate people with dyslexia. right,
no,
which is basically what he's saying, right? Is that all of these characters hate people who can't spell for shit, right? Which is weird. It's just, there's way more of a gradients here than that, right? Like it's way more complicated than boiling it down to like that simple of a thing, right? And Lolly, you're completely on the money too. Is that for a lot of the straight man type characters, the whole point of the straight man is having the straight man react to the craziness happening around them, right? That's the whole gimmick, I guess, right? Yeah. So it's very weird that he's speaking about it in this very, like, general tone when it's way, like, these characters, the gradient of characters that he has in this category is way vaster than that. Like, come on now, Digi.
And when your scale kind of starts breaking down, when, like, it's exerting characters from Lucky Star and K-On!, which aren't the most deep characters on Earth.
They're not the most. Yeah, they're not the most complex, right?
Yeah, by design,
Hell,
they're not
even-
terribly
even-
deep
even-
characters.
Even Misty from Pokemon is not particularly complex, right? And it's yeah. Let's keep going.
To assume positions of authority because of their ability to identify and enforce the rules of a system to the letter. However, being on the far end of the lexical spectrum, these people have difficulty understanding and communicating with more impressionistic people, which can make it difficult for them to take up leadership positions that require them to communicate with those people. The spirit of the law is often difficult to capture in its letters, after all, which is why a lot of legal language is written to be deliberately
Wait,
and
pause
intricately
again.
vague.
Pause again real quick.
Yeah, I
it's
did.
paused for us, I think.
Oh, it's paused for you guys? Oh, that's
We
bad.
might. Okay,
I'm
you
gonna
you
pause on
pause
my
it.
end.
You
God damn it.
you pause it and then you unpause it, and that should hopefully sync it. If you control
Alright,
it.
what timestamp are you guys at?
I
I'm
can't
at
see.
440. I'm at 447.
Okay, I'm at 5:05, so I'm going to just move it
Yeah,
back.
just
see
drag
if
it back to
doesn't,
4.
Like,
Yeah.
doesn't resync. Does it resync at like? Yeah.
Yep.
there we go.
Yep. Every synced it. We're good.
Oh, okay. So
do your fort.
So his whole thing with Jet Black about not or how these type characters in this position often don't get into the leadership position that allows them to communicate with more impressionistic thinkers. That is not the case with Jet Black at all. He mostly ran the operation aboard the Bebop.
Again, he's speaking in these like really like broad brush type terms, right? Like I don't.
Yeah.
I just can't. I'm
And-
losing
and
it.
Tsun-
the autism is too much for me. I can't.
Tsunemori Akane is also in a group filled with. She is the most clear-headed, straight woman there ever is in that world of her. And she's working with the extrinsic, the weirdos, and she's doing perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And she's
Don't
also in the
recall a
position of
time.
authority over other people as well. So like I don't understand. the
I don't.
whole-
And
I
she's
don't
doing-
recall. I don't. I
and
don't
she's-
recall. I don't recall a time in Psychopaths where she had any issues communicating with anyone.
Well, she has issues connecting in the beginning, but
Well,
at the end,
that's different than communication, though.
Yeah.
Connecting with someone is
the
different
idea
than being
of
able to
Psychopaths
communicate.
and how that approaches psychology completely invalidates a lot of this, because you see Tsunemori shift more towards understanding impressionist thinkers, in his own words rather, as the series goes on. You know, that's why they're constantly
Yeah,
like, oh,
that's
make sure you
that's
check
actually
your
true.
make sure you check your what I forget what the name of the what they call
The
it.
Sybil system.
Yeah, your
code
your
thing.
yeah,
you.
Your numbers.
yeah.
Your
It's,
numbers.
it's like yeah, you need to make sure you check these levels, because you know in the universe of that show, much like in our universe, we aren't completely static. And God, it's so weird that he uses Tsunemori for this, because she directly invalidates the whole
it's
idea of
weird.
this chart.
Yeah, it's weird, but let's keep going, because we'll get through this one section and then we'll probably have enough to stop.
This is why linear thinking, hyperlexical thinkers tend to be better at enforcing rules than they are at making or understanding rules, hence my titling them as middle managers. For one of these people, the biggest threats to their happiness are getting trapped in a system that takes advantage of them, and their difficulty in communicating with less lexical thinkers. Linear thinkers tend to have a powerful sense of self, since at any given time they define themselves in that moment by their singular ongoing chain of thought, whereas more lateral thinkers may struggle to place themselves within the current moment, instead viewing themselves in terms of behavioral trends or life arcs. But we'll talk more about lateral thinkers when we get to their sections.
Keep
In order to get the
I think L, no, not L. I mean, L has a very distinct, strong personality or sense of self. And I think that Light also has a very a strong sense of self in the terms of being a god.
Yeah.
So
both of
wouldn't
their
he be
strong
lower on this? Or
Yeah, both of
whatever?
their strong senses of self are exactly what brings them into conflict with one another.
Yeah, it's again he's being a bit. It's ditchy, but anyway, let's see because I think we're getting close to the end now.
Best understanding of how these neurotypes manifest themselves in anime, I find it most helpful to start by highlighting the characters with the highest and lowest IQs in each category, as they show us the extremes of how these neurotypes affect a person's life. Our high IQ characters will be the patron saints of their respective categories, while the lower IQ characters will be the workin' hards. The patron saint of middle management would be...
Okay, so since this was the character that we've agreed is the one that rips his entire shit to pieces, let's see, this is actually really good. We can do this character, and then we should be done. Right? What is his explanation for why he has put this character here? Let's find out.
Tsunemori Akane from Psycho-Pass. Top of her class and given the highest recommendation for every possible job in government by the government, Akane was pretty much written specifically to be the ultimate Type A personality. It could be argued that her arc over the course of the show is basically just her struggle to understand the conception nearly everyone else she encounters has, that the letters of this world's laws are fundamentally flawed. And in the end, she comes to the conclusion that the spirit of the law, while yet intangible, is something fundamentally different from the current letter of the law, and that she will from now on consider herself loyal to the letters of her own codification of that law. Now, of course, no one's ever been...
That's it. No understanding of her co-workers who were very who's on the expressionistic side.
None of that at all.
Yeah,
and it's very quick too.
A lot of the character arc involves her like directly, bantering, or like a lot of her writing the law, or has her like bantering and having back and forth with people that are under her charge and would be argued to be more on the impressionist side because they're a higher threat in the civil system, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that I think he's kind of misunderstanding Akane's character arc throughout Psycho-Pass, because it came across to me that through her understanding, or as he said, through her understanding of the law, she shifted her mode of thought to be away from that. Like, if she reorganizes her understanding of the spirit of the law as opposed to the letter of the law, she wouldn't be in a middle manager position anymore. And in his chart at the end of that series, she would have very, very easily shifted, like, I would say a bit higher up, either on the ladder or the lateral, or a bit more towards the impressionist scale, right? Because the concept of a spirit of the law is more impressionist, or more,
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
I would in this in the scenario that Digi constructed, I would place Akane way more to the right after the end of the series.
I mean, okay, let's think of, just in terms of American law, let's think of constitutional amendments, right?
Yeah.
And the
But just to
interpretation
add
of...
to let me finish.
the interpretation of constitutional amendments in particular, right? They're codified, within the Constitution of, let's do a controversial one because it's easier to mention extremes when it's controversial. Second Amendment,
right
to bear arms. Don't get into an argument.
bear arms.
I want you to behave when I bring this up.
Shall not be infringed.
Yes, I want the two of you to behave right now, or I'm turning this.
You're not even an American.
Shut up, Ellie.
So, for some people, because there is a lot of controversy around what the intent of the right to bear arms was. It says in the codified that it shall not be infringed. It's very direct, but when you get over to actual court cases in regards to it, and there are books written about what was meant or whether or not meaning has shifted over time, because the original intention of that, what would have been the spirit of it, was that the founding fathers didn't want to give up the ideal of the private militia for people the right for people to police themselves in their own communities, right?
Yeah.
So,
and I feel like also to add to that, there was also the fact that at the time America had just gotten over essentially a civil war in order to gain the right of independence.
Yeah.
And the way that they managed to get that right of independence was through the use of not private.
Yeah. So
public,
they didn't want
militia, right?
So they didn't want to give up.
They didn't want that right. Yeah.
They didn't want to give up that ideal.
Sorry.
Yeah, they didn't want to give up that ideal. And that's not mentioned in the letter of the law itself. That's something that we get the impression of, right? So by default, with Akane coming to her own, we get the impression of it because that's what we consider the spirit of that constitutional amendment. What they were trying to enact, their will upon their world through that. That's an impressionist. That's the impression that we get, and that's the impression that the courts have gotten through that. So you can kind of, with Akane, you can say that, yeah, just by simply coming to an understanding that she needs to follow the spirit of the law rather than how it's written directly, if she was to look at this law in the first place, she'd be like, oh, okay, well, everybody needs to have everything because it's written down, while,
free guns for all.
Could be, yeah, the more impressionist form of it could easily be, well, everybody needs to have access to this because it is our foundational, it's our foundational principles that have the ability to the autonomy that a weapon could provide, right?
Yeah.
So I want to go back to the show for a minute. I kind of disagree. I'm thinking about it, and I kind of disagree that Akane was even in middle management in this case, in the first place, because of course the law of Sybil is if you're red, you're dead.
Yeah.
And
the very first conflict that we see in the show is that she technically saves someone's life.
Yeah.
Right? Through breaking that kind of, I guess, rule, right?
Yeah.
Read you're dead. She manages to calm someone down and prove that maybe there is a different way to go about this.
Yeah, so a little more context for the people who don't know. Yeah, if your numbers are high, you're a danger to society, and you get a free pass to kill them.
Also, since we're kind of, actually, I don't know if you can mute the video, Ellie, but since we're kind of done, maybe we could mute the video and just let it play in the background while we talk. Because I think we're pretty much, I think we're kind of at the point where we're sort of like done with the video itself. He's kind of explained everything.
You can play it.
Yeah, have you muted it? Just so it's
yeah, it's fine.
Okay. I'll just mute it myself. Just so that it's not a static screen as we talk about this.
Yeah.
But yeah, for context, yeah. So the initial thing in Psychopaths was, yeah, if you go over a certain score in the Sybil system, they class you as irredeemable and you essentially are killed, right?
Yeah.
There was a situation where there was a female character who had been traumatized, and that trauma had raised their score, and she was about to get executed by one of the other characters, but she intervenes and manages to calm that person down to a point where their score was no longer in that red category and instead moved into, I think, yellow or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
yellow.
So, that, again, I think you're correct in that his assessment of the character is somewhat flawed, and I think it's because of the fact that he is thinking in these very general terms and very broad brushy kind of, oh well, this character's kind of fits in, so it must fit in with all the other that kind of thing, where it's significantly more complex than that, and I think he's oversimplifying it in every regard.
Yeah, and if we're just talking while the video is playing, I think this is speculation, this is my impressionistic take on the video, is that he was basically doing the good old MBIT tests on these characters, but he had trouble deciding on what those characters would be, or how they would ask the questions. Which characters are introverted, which not, etc.
So you have the feeling that he was making a video where he was going to characterize them based on the standard testing procedures, and yet he ran into problems because obviously an anime character does not have the same level of maybe complexity is the wrong word. How would I put this? Right? They're not real people, right?
Yeah.
They don't think like a real person. They are constructs of traits that real people possess and exert, right? Because that's what a character is, in a sense. It is a construction by someone else in order to portray a particular idea of what someone is, right? It's not free-flowing in a sense that it, and the only way that a character can change is if the story written by the person creating it wills them to change, right? In that sense, so that's why I feel like these kinds of tests, right, are not designed for characters, right?
Yeah.
They are designed for individual people who have the capacity to change over time, and there's more complexity there and that kind of thing. So, although this has been a fun thought experiment, right? It's an interesting thought experiment to kind of think about and talk about, right? I think that there are serious issues with his methodology, and there are serious issues with the way that he generalizes things and he categorizes things. It's just a bit of an autistic mess. I guess.
Yeah, I wanted to finish my speculation real quick. So my speculation is that he wanted to do personality tests on these characters, but he couldn't find a satisfying definition of the different traits that he wanted to put those characters in. And instead of looking it up or asking somebody to clarify what those terms are and meant and how they would apply in which way or the other, he decided to make a whole new thing, which still is very flawed, but it satisfies him.
Yeah.
We have problems with it.
Yeah, we
But
have experience
it
with
satisfies
people
him.
making their own definitions or charts or
Yeah.
terms for things. I would say that
Yeah.
I would say that on its face, this is probably at least a little bit more useful, but not.
It's
not as egregious as some other examples we've seen, but it's definitely got problems.
It's neat. It's innocent, innocuous. Doesn't really matter too much. What annoyed me more about this is that he dismisses the MIBT out of no, it's wrong.
Yeah,
Myers-Briggs test. Just say Myers-Briggs.
Myers-Briggs. He dismisses the Myers-Briggs without explanation. Well, no, he does an explanation. He says because it doesn't account for the character's thinking, which is very presumptuous.
I think I know what the problem is. I think I know what your problem is. He's arrogant.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
That's
that
my
he's arrogant.
conclusion. You're jumping to my conclusion, man.
Well, that's because it's so fucking easy to see that that's your conclusion. I'm
Did he
trying
grow
to not
arrogant?
drag.
Color
Yeah,
me shocked. As long as that's his personality. Look at his room.
Like Ellie, I am like I'm skipping because I'm able to articulate what you're trying to say in fewer words, right?
Oh, Mr.
Damn,
Mr. fucking lexical thinker over here.
Yeah, man. Totally.
Damn.
No,
I'm
no,
just
but
a goddamn new type. Too impressionist
ha
for your...
ha 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 ha.
Ellie, your
But
IQ
no,
isn't high enough to be a new type.
Damn. I'll just be pure instinct then.
Oh god. So
Destroyed.
anyway, that is at the end of the day what I think the problem is he comes off very arrogant and he's being very dismissive of the other things. I think that if he didn't have that level of arrogance, right, this would just be a fun kind of thought exercise, right? Just
look at what I made.
Yeah, look at this interesting thing. I'm not saying that it's perfect or anything, or that it's going to replace the fucking Myers test or whatever, right? It's just a fun little thought experiment to kind of think about what his characters
too much
would
effort,
think, right?
He's put too much effort, and he made too many follow-up videos to this for it to come across.
Oh yeah, can you pause real quick?
Yeah.
Well, it comes.
Yeah.
Or can I just say one thing? So
Yeah.
He put too much effort into this, and he produced too many follow-up videos to this for me to not just say, oh, this is just an elaborate shitpost. No, this is very much a serious thing. It comes across as him doing this as a completely sincere and serious things, and more power to him. But it's specifically because of him taking this as seriously as it is that it actually does stand to reason that people can criticize it. Because I know some people are going to be like, oh, you're just taking a joke video seriously. It's like, no, this ain't a joke video.
Yeah, I don't think this is a joke video either. I think he's 100% sincere and serious about this. Like, I think
I wanted to mention some bits from the videos that came after this one. But first, he plays Rimuru with a very high IQ. And I think that's right, because you've watched the show.
Ellie, we all know you have a hate boner for slime, okay?
No. The thing is that he has a sage, that magical AI.
Yeah, exactly. So he's going to be hyper smart anyway. Like,
because
the IQ may as well just be infinite.
He just delegates all tasks to the AI, even puts up automatic programs, routines to do.
Yeah, like he's not. Again, the IQ may as well be infinite because his actual IQ is probably more like within normal territory, but like because he has the thing, right? So I agree with you there. That's he may as well have just put an infinity symbol there, and that actually would have been a funny joke. That actually would have been pretty good. I would have liked that.
He does put infinity up for Nagato in the human computers, which is of course very weird because Nagato is
So he missed the obvious joke with the whatever.
No.
Let's get into as you brought up, he has made some follow-up videos where he tries to kind of explain this. I don't know if we're gonna if it's really worth us going and covering those as well, to be honest.
No, you can just play the video again, and I'll mention some things that I don't know if you two watched them all or completely.
I haven't watched. I watched the second one to about the point when he starts talking about his friends and where he would put his friends on the graph, and I haven't watched the third one.
So
he actually tried to use this for real people then.
Yeah,
he did it. He does in the second video. He tries to use it for his friends on his podcast to try and because he's trying to explain this to people, right? So now, so he's gone from because he obviously got a lot of the criticisms that I think we're leveling at him now. He probably got a lot of that in the comments as well. So he's made a follow-up video where he's like, okay, so here's me, alright, maybe I was a bit wrong, I've changed a couple of things, here's Rika's version of the graph, that's a bit more, I actually do like Rika's version of the graph because it's easier to pinpoint.
It looks neater, it looks cleaner.
It looks cleaner and it's easier to point.
This would have been the perfect video to
someone,
have him,
right?
and we'd be 2 seconds in, and Ellie and him would still be arguing.
Yeah, no. If we had Rika on here, it would be that, and it would be stopping at every single fucking opportunity.
That'd be
But
great.
Well, but
it would be great. But no, so to let me finish, right? So he in the second video, he makes a few corrections. He changes a couple of wordings on some things. I think he addresses the IQ issue a little bit, and then he goes into the bit where I jumped out was when he started going over putting his friends, because I don't give a fuck about that, to be honest.
Yeah,
I jumped out at that point, and then I haven't watched the third video. So Ali, you can kind of talk about that.
all right, so he addresses the IQ, and he basically repeats what he said in the first video, but with 2 more sentences afterwards. Or like, I wanted to show that IQ isn't really doesn't determine your placement. That's why I included IQ.
But that's stupid, because if IQ doesn't, like, why even have it in the first place? Why even bring it up? Who's going to bring it up, right? Like, that's what I don't understand, is if his point was, the intelligence of the person doesn't indicate their position on the graph, right?
Mhm.
Why even bring up IQ? And also, there you go, there's Yuki with fucking Max on the IQ,
Yeah.
right? Like, why even bring it up in the first place, right? If it's not actually relevant to where their position is on the graph. That's where I'm getting, like, that's where my own process, right, is kind of hitching a little bit. Like, I don't understand why he would bring it up if it wasn't important.
Yeah, and
It almost feels like he's trying to, like, cut that, like he said, the criticism of well, you're just putting the smart people in the whatever category, right? I feel like he's trying to cut that off at the pass, when I highly doubt that anyone would actually, like, because again, who the fuck knows what the IQ of an anime character is, right?
yeah.
Like, who's gonna how do you even calculate that? He hasn't even actually properly explained how he's calculated that, right? Other than I read the source material or whatever, and I based it on how they do decision making and whatever, which is entirely inaccurate, right? In terms
Subjective.
of actual test. Yeah, it's entirely subjective, it means it's, in terms of actually categorizing something like this in terms of raw data, is entirely useless, because, you know, subjectivity doesn't really help when it comes to this kind of thing. So my stance on the whole IQ thing is basically just, why bring it up? Why overcomplicate the whole thing completely?
Yeah, so that's his thing about IQ. He basically repeats himself. Not repeats himself, he re-clarifies it.
Yeah.
Repeating is negative. And then he uses the new chart, which divides up the 16 squares into another 16 squares inside each square. And then he starts placing his friends everywhere. And he does that in the same way where he places these anime characters on screen.
Yeah. Because
Not
he's trying to...
Not centered, out of alignment, right on top of the thing. It looks ugly.
It's because he's trying to explain this to people. And he's trying to make it, like, because he's assuming that everybody watches the PCP and knows who his friends are, right? So they can go, oh yeah, so that, you know, Devu would be here, and and he kind of explains, kind of like, oh yeah, he thinks like this a lot, and he explains things like this a lot, so he would be here. Again, I found that incredibly fucking boring, and I didn't give enough of a shit, so I just stopped, right? I don't care where he thinks his friends are, right? I care about his, like, actual methodologies rather than that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So what was the third video? Because I
Well,
haven't watched that one.
The thing what also happened in the second video was that a lot of more lexical people had issue and the more impression and this is where I had the big old concerns of, he's just going to explain away criticism by putting it on by saying they're just too lexical.
he's categorizing his own critics, which is a problem. He shouldn't be doing that.
And then
He's decide-
yeah, and then you, Naretsu. That's before the video was out. Then you posted the third video, in which what he mainly does is explaining away the criticisms by saying all the people who have issues are lexical thinkers.
So he's essentially he's done a very common tactic among people who are trying to deflect criticism. You take your critics and you put them in a box, and you say that they are that box, and then you can kind of push that whole box off the cliff, right? You go, oh, like for example, right? You take people that criticize like movies objectively, right? You just say, you're criticizing the movie objectively. That means that I'm going to categorize you as not caring about subjectivity. And you obviously think that subjectivity... Oh, yeah, this is the best part where he talks about anti-tubers. Here are some recommendations.
Yeah, and what's funny is, of course, that he puts... I forgot exactly, but he either puts Rika in human calculators, or he says, if you are a human calculator, you will like these.
Yeah, he's making recommendations based on what if you fit these categories. These are YouTubers that you would like.
I like Boss and Select, but I don't like Rika. So where am I?
Yeah, I don't know either. But completely destroying my concentration. Going back to what I was saying, so you put your critic in a box and you go, okay, so you only think about the object. You're reviewing the movie objectively. That means you don't care about subjectivity. You don't care about people's feelings. You don't and you just
you're
kind of
only
like
lexical.
So he
So you're only
his critics as lexical, but he put Rika, who was more, I would say, warm to the idea, and human calculators, which is more lexical.
It doesn't make any fucking sense. But yeah, so you put your critic in the box, right? And you've categorized your critic in that way. Doesn't have to be correct, right? Doesn't have to be, because that's the thing, right? That's the whole point. You're essentially strawmanning the critic and saying, well, clearly you don't understand it because you're a lexical thinker, and you know this is the type of thing that lexical thinkers don't understand. So I'm just gonna put you in that box and then put that in the cupboard, right? Like it's a common thing I tend to see a lot with people who just want to deflect the criticism rather than actually address it. Oh. Because if he actually addressed the criticism, then he wouldn't be just dismissing everyone as lexical thinkers. He would actually
I think
engaging with it.
I don't think he's necessarily I don't think he's consciously dismissing it or deriding his critic.
But it is telling that he naturally thinks to dismiss people.
Yeah, that's it. It's more that, yeah. And of course, in the third video, he makes massive generalizations about who are lexical and who are impressionistic. And you've seen my texts, my spelling. I put always punctuation and capital letters and commas and dots and question marks.
You're pretty good at the typing, yeah.
Yeah, but that's because I'm dyslexic, and if I don't keep an eye on my spelling and on my punctuation, nobody can read it.
Yeah, this is I can't function without having spell check turned.
So,
and even then, I still fuck up and I still miss things, especially when things get heated and I have to fucking like type quickly because I feel rushed. Right, I'll just fucking miss shit. So yeah, and I think that's not really a good indicator of whether or not you are whatever, right? I think it's just
And I have a lot of criticism on this chart, but from what I hear, I'm very impressionistic. Apparently, maybe an analyst, maybe a shadow guardian, how it's called in this chart. It's been changed in the following videos.
Shadow.
Who knows where I actually am? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. So, I guess.
Well, Naruto, for funsies, where are you? Maybe if you can pause the video and go back a few seconds.
All right, let me go back to. Okay.
Idiot.
I like to think. It's kind of hard, right? It's kind of hard because if I'm thinking about what I would perceive myself, I would probably be more in tactician or tactician or whatever.
Technicians.
Right? Yeah. Well, I read that as tactician because I'm autistic.
Nice.
So I was gonna put myself there because I view myself as thinking very tactically and planning things ahead. Right? Do a lot of planning ahead, thinking about the possibilities and all that kind of stuff.
Isn't that a brooder or a human calculator?
Possibly, but the problem is I don't agree with the wording. I would if tactician was the word used, I would agree with tactician. I don't agree with brooder because I'm not brooding. I'm planning. I'm scheming. I'm coming up with thinking about the different possible scenarios that can happen based off, the analytical statistical probabilities and coming up with the best course of actions based on what could happen. Right?
Wouldn't it be an analyst or something?
Maybe analyst, but again, I don't. It's not like I'm analyzing the data. I guess I am, but it's like a combo of both analyzing the data and then, tactizing based off it. So I don't know. Maybe I'll just say analyst. Why not? Fuck it.
Yeah.
Just go.
Molly, do you have a firm and tested opinion on an objective test on where you land on this?
That's the
chart.
problem. I honestly can't. Like as somebody who you've seen it before, where I very jokingly say I do a lot of what I call backyard psychology, just because I like examining people and I like understanding how people think, as it were. I appreciate that form of understanding. And I think it really is kind of due to me not having an inherent understanding of people that I try to come to understand it or whatever. So, with that in mind, I honestly couldn't fucking say. Because people are different depending on their moods, depending on their state, their frame of mind, depending on the situation they're in, because people act differently depending on what company they're in. There are people who have a more professional outlook that are or act more professionally in an office environment but are fucking party animals behind the scene, right? That's why I say I can't really say. It confuses me that he's using this chart for actual people, because it's honestly not that useful and falls into the same trap that the Myers-Briggs test falls into, just a bit more egregious, because now it's in forms of thinking that people this isn't how thinking works.
And that, like I said, that sounds very similar to my issue, because my issue is that what I actually perceive, the wording is not correct for me. I don't particularly I guess relate to any of these archetypes that he's listed.
Albert Einstein,
right? That
was often called a human calculator, right? He was very intelligent. A lot of people would consider him more lexical thinking. He was a practicing Jew, right? He practiced Judaism. Religion is inherently more impressionistic, than lexical or logical, however you would say it. It's more impressionistic because it deals with matters of the spirit and with matters of, ascension and stuff like that. And it was something that he kept very separate from his own field of understanding physics, right? Which is what I'm trying to say. People think differently depending on what they're engaging with. What subjects they might be engaging with.
And that's why it makes it very...
Yeah.
That's why that's the issue with doing this with anime characters, is that anime characters don't have that freedom.
Even more,
right? Because they're locked in. Because they're locked in. They're going to react the way that the creator wants them to react.
But even then, they're not really that locked in, because character arcs often shift people's...
Yeah, that's true.
Shift how people think. You mentioned that with Akane, for example, and then you have people that are like
That's true. Yeah.
completely three-dimensional in quite a bit. I know. I'm going on. Just let me go on for a bit.
No. I'm not trying to. I'm not trying
Yeah,
to rush
yeah.
you. Don't worry. I'm just
People, you know, you have characters that are more three-dimensional. Like I wouldn't know where to put Major Makoto from Ghost in the Shell in this because of how varied her character is and how, amazingly, honestly, how consistent the character is despite how different her
complex
reactions to certain situations. She's, you know, contemplative at times. She's very chauvinistic at other times.
Maybe I'm using the wrong kind of word to describe what I'm thinking here when it comes to like.
This entire chart's using the wrong kinds
because
of words.
Well, it's because I'm thinking at it from the idea of that these are not living people that have, like, I guess, I mean, because we could go into the whole discussion about, oh, do we really have free will and
Nah, we're not going there.
You could go on about that shit till the cows come home, but the fact of the matter is that a fictional character technically does not have a will of its own. It is a will that is given to it by the creator, right? And how well that creator kind of writes that will,
understands
I guess.
the character.
It's all very dependent on the creator itself, not the actual character, and that's why that's kind of what I'm trying to get at when I say that they are locked in, because they're locked into what the creator is intending for them.
The Fate
right?
series, for
and
example,
pushing them
right?
towards
the Fate Stay Night
I'll let you
series. Think of the way Nasu wrote Gilgamesh in the original Fate Stay Night. Now think about how Urabuchi wrote him in Fate Zero.
Yeah.
People
So
often get
in
it
Fate Stay Night, he's just an arrogant and he dies with a
arrogant,
dagger in the
he's
face.
he's arrogant, he's cocky, he thinks he's the best of everything. In Fate Zero, he almost has a philosophical bent to him.
And he is a right.
Yeah.
It is divine right.
Yeah.
And then you
He's
should
not
see,
arrogant.
and then
He
you
is.
should see him in the Fate Go anime. That just did. Holy shit!
Yeah, I haven't bothered watching the Fate Go anime, but yeah, that
Yeah, and Fate Go, of course, he's just and fair. And yeah, in Fate Zero, he is arrogant and he has the right.
Yeah, well, in Fate Stay Night, his arrogance just was, oh well, I'm the king of kings, whereas in Fate Zero, I think Nasu had a bit more of or not Nasu, I think Urabuchi had a bit more of an understanding on the concept of divine right to rule than Nasu did. So you know, he wrote his character as being, you know, he's not arrogant because he thinks he's the best. He's arrogant because by the laws of the gods that made him, he is the one who is destined to rule.
Right.
Like, it's a completely different dimension, and that's another thing. This entire thing, because he specifically mentions that, you know, he's willing to ignore canon IQ. He's also kind of willing to ignore context in which people act as well, or which characters act as well. But there's a lot of context to this that just makes this chart, like, the more you think about it, the more it, like, breaks down. New Type, for example, Lane, one of the major character arcs in that anime involves the fact that there's a separate personality version of herself on the Wired. Yeah. And that separate personality would be far more towards, I would say, clear-sighted or room brightener, because that alternate personality is supposed to be like a bit more of a party animal, or a bit more of a person that's willing to throw down, you know, and kick ass and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I guess to kind of cap it off,
this chart is garbage.
I guess. I guess.
I was warm.
It's been I was
warm to it. I was warm to it at the beginning of this. I'm not nearly as warm to it now. Like, the more I think about it, the more it just. Yeah. The more it kind of breaks down and doesn't feel terribly useful, and on some levels might even be harmful to discussion for people, because people are like, oh, you know, look at this chart, this character's right here.
Yeah, and I feel like in my opinion, as I mentioned before, it's a fun kind of thought experiment, and it's fun to think about. And I mean, we've definitely gotten a really good discussion out of it, right? So it's not all bad, right?
Oh yeah,
And I
it's
think
a
that
fun
it is,
thought experiment, but he sees this as more authoritative.
Yeah, the issue is that he sees it as more authoritative, and his arrogance is showing, and it's not actually helping, right? I think that if he had presented this as more kind of like, oh, look, it's fun, look at this thing I made, let's have some fun with this, let's think about this, and like got people involved as well. He's like, hey, what do you guys think? Let's have like, discussions about it and talk about it, and psychoanalyze these characters, and make it more of a kind of a community type thing. I think it would have been quite fun in a sense to do that kind of thing and kind of spark that across because it would get people kind of thinking about that on like a community context, right? Like thinking a bit more about these characters that we obviously like and enjoy and that kind of thing. But because he's come at it from this sort of the traditional is wrong, I am right, this is the new way, that kind of thing. I feel it just kind of muddies the whole sort of concept, I guess.
Yeah, that's what brought me in, his immediate dismissal of proven but dated techniques.
Alright, well,
yeah, and
I'll let
we
you finish.
and we've discussed it at length by this point, but his new chart isn't much better either. So
yeah.
and what the last thing, of course, his dismissal, his hand waving, his implicit denial of criticism by making his critics all fall into the lexical category is detrimental.
All right. Well, I think that just about does it. It's been fun chat, and I guess we will see you all next time.
Yeah,
Later.
bye-bye.
Bye.